Welcome everyone to Voice of Terminus show number 40. Today's discussion is the Rogue, and I'm joined today by Lexa. Say hello, Lex.
Hello.
And say hello, Kodiak. And there we go, that's
Good
Kodiak's
afternoon.
hello. And while we, before we kick this off, we have Glenn with us today as our special guest. Say hello, Glenn.
Hello.
And as I see, I have Lexa and Kodiak switcheroo today. Get that fixed real quick.
There, I was awesome.
Right, so today's topic, as I said, is the Rogue, and I'm going to quickly go and read off the short description. The treacherous Rogue is far more than a trickster. With her daggers, she is ruinous force that smiles at the dark places and unravels her enemies with terrifying efficiency. So, we all know that the Rogue has already kind of been released, the basic info on that class, so I'm going to go and bring it up on the screen. And we're going to go through this before we get into all the speculation and discussions and everything. So, while I bring it up, swift, elusive and deadly, the treacherous Rogue is far more than a trickster. With daggers drawn, she is a ruinous force, dwelling in the dread of her foes and smiling at the dark as if it were an old friend. In the shifting sands of this fragile era, rogues are sought out for the faceless affairs of nations, yet their allegiance is rarely to a banner or creed. And the group role that VR have put out is melee DPS and support, and the armor that rogues will be able to wear is medium chain and leather.
For weaponry, rogues are proficient with most one-handed weapons, being used to situations where they have to improvise with the best tools at hand. While daggers, rapiers, short swords, and other piercing weapons tend to be their preference, they are no strangers to most simple and militaristic weapons, including ranged and alchemical creations. Their ability arsenal. The rogue calls upon a multitude of skills, such as trap finding, disabling traps, and opening locks. They can also strike an opponent when they least expect it with deadly precision, oftentimes with a poison-coated blade. Some rogues are driven to experimentation with crafting their own devices and alchemical concoctions to distract, damage, and escape their foes.
And the iconic ability is Improvise Alchemy. Embracing life on the edge, the rogue calls upon their knowledge of poisons and mixtures to whip up an improvised potion to hurl at their opponents. Such creations aren't made with the level of care a dedicated alchemist might craft, so the rogue never knows for sure what effect they're going to come up with until they see the result in combat. So that's basically the information we have been given on the Rogue by VR. Now, with that, guys, that info being put out there, how do you see this Rogue? What do you expect after hearing that description, knowing the group role, the armor class, the abilities, weaponry, etc.? We'll start with you, Kodiak.
Let me think. The only thing that I could see, because mostly you're saying like piercing weapons and stuff, but when you start talking about like bone or skin or having different situational weapons, are they going to get a bonus or some type of a deduction for using other weapons types? You know?
Lex, what about you?
Well, I know they said the group role is going to be melee DPS and support, but it does really lend to the feel that you're not going to get a rogue strictly for its DPS. You're going to want it for its utility and the fact that it can do DPS while providing you with a whole bunch of extra options in combat.
Nice. What about you, Glenn? What's your take on it?
Yeah, I'm kind of with Lexer on that. What I'm really hoping that they're going to do is make it more than just the melee DPS. I would really like to see them focus on disabling traps, pickpockets, picking locks, again, all that utility type of stuff. I really want the rogue to feel important. I mean, of course, everyone wants their favorite class to feel important and be needed, but it would be nice to have, people grouping for a dungeon or a raid or whatever, saying, "Hey, we need a rogue for this one because there's traps," or "We need a rogue for this one because we need to get the keys from the guard," or whatever. So that's where I'm really looking for the rogue to be more of a utility, and I'm also really interested in this improvised alchemy.
Well, it does say in the description that the rogue will be able to work on traps, set traps, unlock them, etc. Pickpocketing, I would love to see as well. Definitely, for sure. So let's go and dive into this class. We've seen what VR have released on the basic description of the class. What else would you guys like to see from the rogue? There was one idea that was talked about yesterday in our Discord chat. The rogue, instead of him going in visibility where we can see him outlined, that he's invisible, for us in the group, the rogue would completely disappear. For the player who's playing that rogue, obviously he would be able to see where his character is, but somebody, I think Mortinus was it, who brought that up, is basically having a true invisibility, so he completely disappears off the visual aspect of your screen. What do you think about something like that, having him actually truly disappear, and then all of a sudden, surprise, he's right next to you?
Well, personally, I know I've said in the past that there is a fine line between realism and fun in games. For me, being a rogue and being the sneaky type, I tend to want a little more realism. I hate this. I'm standing in an open field, but I'm a giant character and I'm sneaking, but you can't see me. I mean, I don't care how good you are at hiding. If you're in an open field, you can't hide from people. It's just the way it is. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not saying don't let people hide in like corridors or something. You've got to have a little bit of just give and take in terms of stuff like shadows and all that stuff. But
I mean, with the tab target system, it's never going to work because you'd basically be released invisible. You tag on him, and you'll have a blue circle under his invisible body, so you'll know exactly where he is anyway. Right. So that's never going to work.
Right. Now, if you put a rogue who's sneaking and it's dark, then have him disappear, completely gone. But if he's like, and if you're in a forest, it's daylight, and he's hiding, it doesn't make sense to make him disappear because he could just be hiding behind a tree. And it's like, I see you, but I'm not the guy you're hiding from.
Yeah.
So, personally, I don't like that. And from a tank perspective, I don't like it even more because I have to keep track of my party. I kind of keep them close. I keep them safe. And if I can't see them, I can't keep them safe.
Well, like Kodiak pointed out, basically, with the tab targeting, if you can tab target and use your function keys, F1 being yourself, F2 being the second member in your group, etc., etc. Obviously, yes, it's going to be a dilemma for you, especially as a healer, figuring out where he is. You might press F4, that's your rogue, you see him, but he's way off. He's way away, and he might miss a heal or something like that he's desperately needing and stuff. It's a cool idea, but for Pantheon, I don't think it's the right fit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it would be nice to see something more to the rogue being more of an assassin kind of class, where he basically is really sneaky, really quiet, etc. Kodiak, you got anything to add to it?
I know they scrapped all the Kickstarter stuff, but anyways, I was reading some of that, and they were talking about how they go to the planner shift when they go invisible. So it would be, I guess, if they went invisible, they still exist. They're just not, here anymore. If there was some type of a C planner ability or something, and then you'd be able to see them throughout the world.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you say they shift to a different plane of existence through whatever means. If that's how you say they hide, then disappear. That makes sense. I'm still going to tell my rogues, stay close to the group, you know.
Exactly.
But I'm not going to sit there and go, I can't see you, I hate this.
Well, because
if
the
I
way
look
they
into
made
it, it'll
sound
make
like
sense to me why.
is that it's not invisibility. Invisibility would be like a spell where, you know, the rogues could actually shift between, like you said, different universes, you know.
So it's more of like you know, a time shift. Basically, you know, you see the last wind of his body that's moved from that position to that position. Glenn, what's your take anyway on it? Should the rogue be able to completely disappear, or you know, is that realism something that people would like to see? Would you like to see, or do you think, you know, the outlining of the class is just fine?
Yeah, I don't see any real advantage to the group members not being able to see him. It's really more, you know, the mobs being able to detect them. And I can see Lex's point about realism, but I think that maybe, you know, the tabletop rogues, they had an ability called hide in shadows, and also there was also a thing called shadow walk, and I think maybe if you had it so that, as Kodiak was saying, they're stepping into another realm and then re-emerging or whatever, you know, maybe they're using the shadow plane to sort of get through, you know, use the shadows and dark areas to sort of maneuver around things or through things. I think that would be a great way of explaining it.
Well, I said you would lose your tap target ability. So if you were like, oh crap, I need to heal him, but guess what? He's not even in this plane right now. He's in a totally different plane. But the advantage of it is maybe he can get, you know, it's ×2 the damage output from, you know, a backstab or you know, or something. Like, there's, even though it's a negative aspect on the group not being able to see him or target him, he gains an advantage, you know, when he does come back into the to our plane of existence.
I mean, like you pointed out earlier on, Kodiak, I think it was you. You know, in the open field, he wouldn't. Or actually, it was Lex. In the open field, he couldn't hide. He can't just disappear. You know, it's technically not right. What about adding a function, you know, with your idea as well? When it gets dark, the more darker it is, or the more more of the environment he can use to his advantage to hide himself, the better his stealth is. Kind of system.
I think in the end, what it comes down to for me is the fact of if they're going to go invisible, they're hiding from the group. There's no reason to hide from a group. There's literally zero reason to hide from your group. So it's almost pointless work. I mean,
well, see, and that's what I said. I know that, like I said, I know they scrapped the Kickstarter thing, but like I said, I was reading it and I was watching the little videos and they were talking about the rogue, and I actually thought they had a cool idea, is that when they would go into, let's say, the shadow plane, they would actually combat inside that plane, right? And they would be attacking the mob's soul, basically, and debuffing the mob, but, like, you know, his soul, not the actual physical body. So you'd be crippling the soul of the body through the shadow world, not through.
So basically, you'd be attacking the monster from the inside instead of from the out.
Right.
Correct.
And I think that'd be a good way to justify all that. I mean, I'm going to admit that I'm not of the camp where I think rogues should be support. I am not there at all. Like, not even close. I love my rogues, and I love my rogues stabby. That's just the way I am. I'm old school. Should they have a little utility? Well, yeah, but that's done through your poisons or your alchemical concoctions, you know, not through this, like, pop, I'm in a different realm, because you think going to a different realm will require an abundance of magic to do. And these guys just kind of, you know, flick their wrists and poof.
Well, since you brought that up, Lex, Smarty in our Discord wrote, rogues make me think 3 archetypes: thief, assassin, and duelist. What about something like that, where you can basically you have the choice to play the
Well,
rogue you want to play.
I agree with you, Lex. I think that rogue should be. I'm just trying to spark conversation, so that's why I'm bringing those up.
I know.
But
Oh,
I agree.
I hold nothing against you, man. Nothing at all.
Backstab.
So what about the
I got
idea?
nothing but love for my Kodiak.
So what about the idea of the 3 archetypes: thief, assassin, and duelist?
Now, in terms of specialization, I like that idea. It gives you different style of gameplay from character to character. A duelist to me screams almost a tank. But here's the thing with that. Because I am a tank, and I've been a tank for many, many years, I don't like the thought of a DPS-centric character all of a sudden standing on my level as a tank. That
like
bugs
Rangers
me.
did in EQ1.
Yeah, like Rangers in EQ. You could get a Ranger that was well over geared with raid gear, and he could tank just as well as a Warrior who wasn't raid geared.
Mm-hmm.
So you took away from the tanking pool because you were a DPS who could take a hit. You know. Now, if they do want to give specializations to rogues, because like I said, we know nothing about specializations. We are flying blind here.
Mm.
But if they were, and you get a duelist that turns out to be almost like a tanky build, I'm cool with that. But you have to make sure it is absolutely balanced and it doesn't pull away from my jobs as a tank.
The way I would
I would rather see a specialization as far as like assassin and maybe an acclimist being the secondary specialization. They can use the poisons. They can with the weapons and throw maybe poison bombs out at people, set poison traps. That being a specialization, and then assassination being a specialization.
Let's get Glenn into it. Glenn, what's your take on the archetypes idea?
Yeah, I mean, I like the archetype ideas. I actually sort of think of a duelist more as an off tank, not a tank, just sort of helping, assisting the tank, but not really being able to take the hits that the main tank would be able to. And I like the other two suggestions, the thief and the
duelist.
I can see that would be good. AA trees to put in there, and then you could specialize your rogue in this way or that way.
The way I view the duelist is not so much him being able to tank, but I picture him having 2 short swords or something like that where he could lash out a lot of DPS. I wouldn't necessarily put the duelist as being able to tank. It's basically the sidekick of a tank. That's the functionality I would see him as. He would still need his tank to be in front of him and protect him from all evil and all danger, but he could, run around the monsters with 2 swords and deal out an awesome amount of damage.
Oh yeah, I mean, say I'm tanking and I'm in a group. If there is a rogue style tank, I'm not going to say let's not get him because I can handle it. That's not going to be the case at all. Because I'm going to look at him as DPS that can help me do my job right. Plus, he's a little bit of a safety net in case things get a little too crazy. And he can still provide more damage than I do. So in my mind, he's still a DPSer. He's just a DPSer that could take a good amount of hits.
Mm. All right, let's go and bring in another idea. Right, this is from Frogzor. As something different, I'd like to see a rogue with a charisma buff, or something along the charming rogue line. We're getting feedback. Maybe with a higher charisma, a rogue could get a free drink from a tavern, wench, or server, or be able to get them and their group into a certain area that they sweet talk the guard into letting them pass. Now, that last point with them getting into certain areas, I kind of like, and it's very interesting. Now, let's say, for instance,
it would actually help with the faction system. Is basically what he's saying. Is if let's say you didn't have enough factions, so then you'd bring a rogue to basically bump the faction of the group up, so they could have access to a specific area.
Yep,
is what you're saying.
Something like that, or getting into, let's say for instance now you've got a group, you've got the rogue in you, now he's decided his faction's basically evil or whatever, and you've got the rest of the people in your group are good aligned. Now you want to go into the ogre city. Now if it was just you and your friends without the rogue, you wouldn't get in, technically. But now, because you've got the rogue in the group, he can go and talk to the guard, and with his charm and charisma, he sways the guard into thinking that, hey, these dudes with me are cool, let them in.
Mm-hmm.
It's a way to sneak into city. So that would mean you'd seek out a rogue to try and get into the evil cities and stuff like that.
I agree with the chat. I mean, that sounds more of a bard ability than a rogue ability. Being able to.
Yeah, I understand. I understand your thinking, your path
Right.
of all this, because it does make sense. You're thinking more of like the charming rogue that you'd see in some movies where they could just literally sweet talk you into anything.
Yeah.
And okay, yeah, but I think in a fantasy or a high fantasy setting, that even if they were to pursue something like that, would be incredibly difficult. But if we go back to what we're seeing so far for the rogue in terms of information, we can definitely expect them to be more of a controlling the flow of battle type support character with DPS added.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, who knows? We don't know about their traps. Maybe their traps are just as flexible as their alchemical concoctions, They could do plenty to help a group. I mean, reading what they've put already, I'm almost guaranteed that I'm going to have a slot in my groups that's going to be specifically for a rogue. Unless they're completely imbalanced to the point where they're either super, super crazy DPS with all this extra jazz, or the exact opposite. If they stay balanced, I'm going to have a spot for them because I love people that are in that role, that know their role very well, and they can literally turn the tide of battle even if something bad happens. It's almost, not saying it is, but I'm saying it's almost like a replacement of having a enchanter for crowd control.
Well, I just think that they need to bring them more than just straight DPS. They do need to have way more utility, just like when we were talking about the, like the wizard being having more than just straight, DPS for the group. Having, being able to control the battlefield of magic, yada, yada, yada. So I think that same thing with rogues, having more support, being able to do more than just damage.
Let's go and get Glenn into the discussion as well. So Glenn, on what we just talked about, with the sweet talking stuff like that, what's your take on it?
I think it works well. It does sound like it's creeping into the bard realm a little bit, but I think that the bards would be more. I've always seen bards as more sort of like the secondary crowd control class, so like a less powerful enchanter type of thing. So I think that the silver-tongued rogues, as it were, it works. I think you could get them into different places, or barring that, using your picking lock skill or picking pocket skill, you can get the keys from the guard. Maybe the guard won't agree to let you in, but while they're chatting them up, they can just stealthily get the key from them, and then open a different entrance or something like that. But that's a little bit of thinking outside.
Can I just quickly jump in? Kodak, can you put on your push to talk? Because we're getting a lot of feedback.
We're getting a huge amount of feedback. Or background noise.
Yeah. Okay.
Or boost up the voice activation. Yeah, I think one thing that's definitely been underutilized in MMOs, especially from a rogue standpoint, traps, lockpicking, 100%. There needs to be definitely more of it. I mean,
and not just to open your chest though.
No, to open doors, to give you extra areas.
Make it a skill, and add like the lockpicking. It opens up like a kind of puzzle for the rogue to do or something like that he has to achieve in a certain amount of time. Otherwise, it's going to be unsuccessful. Give us a chance to pick up doors and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, because I mean,
Yeah, I like the way the Elder Scrolls did lock picking. I thought that was pretty cool, where you have the
and more interactive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely something that needs to happen. But I mean, I'll go from EverQuest 1 naturally. I did play a rogue up to level 50. I basically worked my lock picking from 0 to maximum to do 1 quest. That was the only point of doing it. Other than that, it was no point. Literally no point to lock picking. Eventually, through expansions, there was a reason for you to use your find trap skill. But that was years down the road. But we basically had the find trap and disarm trap ability for probably like 5-6 years before it was ever actually a point of using it.
Nice.
And find trap never worked for stuff like pitfalls. Why not? That's a trap. You know? It's just, there's a lot of little things that, you know, the rogues have suffered enough. They need to have their day.
Yeah. Glenn, what's your take on the lockpicking?
Yeah, well, I'm all for it. See, that's what I was talking about in the beginning, like wanting the rogue to be a little bit more than just the melee DPS. Since VR obviously mentioned it in the description about the lockpicking, the trap finding, the trap disabling. I'm thinking of like the Baldur's Gate games where the rogue actually has to disable traps. I mean, it added an element to the game. It made it more interesting to play a rogue than to just be, oh, well, you're the backstabber. Okay, well, that's great, and I love DPS characters. That's why I choose these characters. But yeah, I mean, I want those moments where it's like, okay, we need to get the keys from the guard, so you need to be able to pick their pocket. We need to be able to get the prisoners freed from their cells, so you need to be able to pick the lock, this type of stuff. And I like what you were saying about making it a skill that you level up. I think all those utility type things, trap disabling, for instance, could be a skill.
Yeah, you should have a success rate, because you're not going to be born into being the expert at lockpicking. It takes years of training and, you know, testing it out and this, that, and the other for you to be a master locksmith. Anyway, let's move on quickly, and because there's a great.
I think of trap sensing would be kind of like tracking. You know, like if you ever tracked an EQ1, like, you know, it takes a while for you to, you know, master it. So, you know, you may never find your thing. But anyways, as you're, you know, running over traps or whatever, you basically, your perception is going off like crazy, you know. But you may not know where the direction is. You just sense a trap until you get skilled up, you know.
Anyway, I want to bring in a question from chat from Dark Soul, because it's actually very, very interesting. Dark Soul Omega asked the question, should they have a disarm ability, or should that be available in most melee classes? The way I see it from my perspective is, it should be available in most classes, because a monk would be able to disarm you. A skilled crusader would be able to disarm you, the same with a dire lord or a warrior. The way I see it, basically, a disarm ability should be available for most melee classes. Not all, but most of them.
Well, I have two schools of thought. On one hand, disarming a trap properly is something that requires an awful lot of skill to do. It takes finesse, you got to be careful, you know, it's just the way it is. Think of like disarming a bomb. But on the other side, a warrior with a giant sledgehammer could hit a bear trap and boom, disabled, you know? I'm not saying they should go either way, but I'm saying that there are definitely merits to both, or at least logic behind both ways. Because I've seen the rogues suffer. I've seen them get thrown to the wayside so many times. I kind of want to leave it rogue only, or at least shared between the rogue and the bard.
Yeah, this idea basically from Dark Soul is directed at weapons disarming, and that's where I see it basically, where, you know, a lot of classes, melee classes, could actually use that. I mean, one of the perfect people to disarm you would be a monk. You know, a monk would be able to.
Melee people would be able to disarm you in some manner. Maybe it may be rogues and monks because they're more about the finesse and the skill, can disarm for longer or just have a better chance of it happening. But I mean, a warrior could technically knock the sword out of your hand.
I could see it basically being split up into the point where, depending on what class you're fighting against, you know, a rogue's not going to go and disarm somebody with a massive staff in his hand. But, you know, if he has shorter, smaller weapons and stuff like that, yes, with his daggers and short swords, he could disarm him. Yeah, or like, you know, facing off a dialogue with a massive two-handed sword, he's not going to disarm that guy with that huge sword.
I just had a great thought about that, right? So if you were dual wielding, see, now I can't use both my hands because I have to use my push to talk. But if you were dual wielding two weapons, you can't disarm somebody, right? But if you had one arm free, let's say you only had one weapon going, then that would give you the ability on your offhand to disarm somebody. Like you would have to have one arm free to disarm. You can't disarm if both your hands are being used.
I can disarm if I stab him in the shoulder.
Yep, he'll drop it there.
When I think of disarming, I think of, like, you know, fencing. You know, they got that little circular wrist move and whoosh, there goes their sword, kind of thing. That screams to me finesse, but you still do it with your weapon. I mean, I don't know how they're going to approach it, but it's just the way that I've always viewed it.
Because the way I see it, you know, a tank, for instance, disarming somebody would be with the use of the shield. He would use his shield to disarm you. It would have to be perfectly timed and everything, you know. He'd be swinging his sword and swinging his shield and everything, and he'll get you at that right moment, bang, bash your shield on your arm and you drop your weapon. That's how I would see, you know, a tank class being able to disarm somebody. It would have to have the use of the shield.
I think this particular topic, like weapon disarming, comes basically down to perspective. Like, I'll use your example. To me, hitting someone with my shield means stun. That's just what it's always meant to me. And disarming them means I basically knock their weapon out of their hand with my weapon. That's what it means to me. To Kodiak, that means I actually physically take it with my hand and remove their weapon. There's no way you could say either perspective is right or wrong.
Exactly.
It's just how the individual views it. So if that comes into the game, we have to try and understand why it's that way from VR's perspective.
Glenn,
I'm gonna say, but that's like saying if I shoot somebody in the head, I disarmed them because now they're dead and they can no longer use their weapon.
Right.
I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me. You didn't really disarm them; you killed them.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Glenn, you got anything to add to this before we move on to the next topic?
Yeah, I think it comes down to weapon type, really, for me. I mean, if it's a light finesse type weapon, the types that rogues use, then yeah, definitely. They could get a rapier out of somebody's hand with a deft flick of the wrist or something like that. But, you know, if it's a two-handed weapon that a big tank is using, no, that's going to require the tank bashing them in the face with a shield. So I think it depends on the weapon type.
Cool. So another idea brought in by Coach. Rogue ideas to touch on, not mentioned yet. Thieves Cant, Thieves Guild, Disarm Traps, Lockpick, Disguise Illusion is one I want to talk about because we already touched on Disarm Traps and Lockpicking kind of. But the Thieves Guild, Disguise Illusion, Intimidation and Corpse Dragging are some of his ideas that he thought we could touch on and talk about. I want to first.
I know in EQ1, like the rogues, you know, you could get different masks for your rogue, and you can basically collect them, and you could, you know, basically like how an enchanter, you know, would turn into other creatures.
That was one of the fun things about being a rogue in EverQuest 1. Your collection of masks. I mean,
what about the idea of basically with the masks? Now, it would obviously have to be very hard to get them, but let's say the rogue would have the opportunity to go and collect masks that look like the ogre in Avendir's Pass or the rats in, you know, so-and-so, or the goblins like so-and-so. They would get a mask that they could put on, and that would basically, when they go into that zone, they could put that mask on and go on their jolly way through there.
But I want to bring something back up because I remember we're talking about enchanters. I don't think they should be able to take on an illusion without knowing the language, knowing the lore, because otherwise you're going to be discovered like that. Like it
Yeah.
gives another twist to that disguise.
Yeah, they have to base, yeah.
You know,
They have to learn how they move, kind of like, you know, how they move about, this, that, and the other. You know, they have to understand the language. Yeah, I think that'd be a pretty cool idea, and a way for, you know, bringing in the corpse dragging as well. Dragging. Yeah, the rogue can't just go in there and grab the corpse. He's got to put the mask on, because it's surrounded by a bunch of orcs or something. So he needs that mask to be able to effectively 100% get the corpse without any risk to himself and to the corpse that he's dragging. Lex, you're smiling. Go on.
This is the scar coming through in me. When you say mask, I thought about making the rogues crafting them. You actually have to collect pieces of their face and make a mask.
Carve off a cheek and an ear and an eyeball. Yeah, I don't think so.
Oh my god. But, okay.
All right, Hannibal Lecter, and sew them together and wear it.
No, seriously, I love the mask idea.
Have half ogre and then have a bit of gnome on the top and some halfling on the top left.
I love the idea. I love it. And here's why. Sneaking, or your typical hide and sneak kind of thing, should be reserved for maybe darker areas or places with more cover. Use your mask as a form of open area sneaking, where I can sneak into that goblin camp because I can dress up like a goblin. So now it's technically the same thing because the mobs pay no attention to you, which is all that sneaking and hiding is about. But you look like a goblin. You walk like a goblin. You'd even talk like a goblin.
Frogs are added basically, but have some body parts put in it as well. So maybe you have to go and collect some of their armor that they, you know, the normal common armor that would drop from the monster. So you go and slay these goblins down. They drop this breastplate. You need to wear that. So you kind of put on a disguise and the illusion kind of thing. So you can add that into it to get away from your idea of having to skin the face, take your face off.
Quest for rogues only, where they have to collect a breastplate, they have to collect a head, they have to collect all these 5 different things, and then once they've had all 5 objects, now they can transform into that specific race. Along with, they have to know the language. You know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's think of it like this, and I swear to God, Glenn, I'll let you talk when I'm done here. But I mean, think of it like this: the EverQuest 2, you used to have to get masteries collections done of a race to get your master's strike ability to affect that specific type of creature. Why not do something similar for the rogues so that you can gather all the pieces to make your disguise? You don't have to be as morbid as me and make it body parts. You could do something like, you know, a goblin's chest piece, a goblin's pants, you know, a goblin headdress, you know, there, boom, I look like a goblin.
And then maybe you could even add the stipulation of the more pieces you have, the more effective it's going to be for you.
Right. And yet, I do believe language should come into it, because maybe as you're walking through the camp, one of the mobs say something to you.
Yeah, it says hello.
Which is a chance for you to get discovered. Because if you don't answer or say what the little tagline is that they want you to say back, sneak failed. But, I mean, that would be a super interactive, interesting way to give the rogue an ability to do corpse recoveries inside of an enemy camp, instead of just saying, you're invisible, go get it.
Yep.
And now I'll let Glenn talk.
Glenn, your take
on
on taking your face off and wearing it.
Where's the wheel of his face?
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of having a disguise and being able to use it and everything. And I was thinking that it would tie into the personality aspect of the game, where different mobs have different personalities. You might be able to sense, you know, this mob is you know, another sort of rogue type character. Maybe use a little thieves camp or something like that. It also would tie in really well, I think, with the perception system. You know, if there's class-specific perception quests, you know.
I mean, there's a lot of ways to run with it.
What was the demeanor thing with the bully and the...
Demeanor was how NPCs acted.
Okay, yeah, with the NPC thing or whatever. Yeah, because if you're in disguise, you're going to want to stay away from those other rogue classes that might spot you out, saying, oh, he's fake, you know, go get him. You know.
I mean, these ideas we're running right now here with, you know, disguise and stuff. This is additional stuff for you to do in your off time when you're not going grouping or going dungeon hunting and this, that, and the other. This is all fun stuff to do along the side as well, and brings advantages to the groups and gives the groups possibilities to adventure and endeavour in areas that they would not think possible before. So let's go and talk about Thieves Guild. As far as I remember, the Thieves Guild for me in EverQuest 2 was basically a faction.
I like that, Dark. Look, he's got a zipper up his back. What's wrong with that guy?
Oh, God. So, Thieves Guild. Explain that one to me, because as far as I remember, for me in EverQuest 2, the Thieves Guild was basically just a faction for the rogue. What does Coach mean by that?
I'm not sure.
Coach, can you elaborate on the Thieves Guild?
When I think Thieves Guild, well, I think any guild, I think of Elder Scrolls, you know. So you would go to the Thieves Guild, and that's where you'd buy your lock picks and maybe your acclimate supplies and, you know, and stuff like that. But
it's almost like a thieves only clubhouse. Basically.
He said he got the idea from Skyrim, yeah.
Yeah, you would only ever be able to buy stuff that pertains to rogues.
Well,
you know,
I can actually support that idea in general for all classes, that you do have your specific class guild per se in game, where only you as a cleric or a rogue or a warrior or a shadow, you know, dire lord can go. And there's, you know, there are some speciality items there or special quests that you can get. Maybe that's a way for you.
Cool throughout the world to have like a rogue only, you know, little hidden thing.
I see it basically that's something for everybody. Every class should have something like that.
Well, no, I'm just saying, but for like rogues over here and maybe a warrior one over there, you know, whatever.
Yeah. They could add, you know, that could go into your class perception system. For you to go and access your class perception system, you would have to go and visit the Thieves Guild or the Warrior Guild or this guild, that and the other, or for, you know, advancing your, you know, your epic item, for instance, your epic weapon or epic armor that you've got. You would have to go and, you know, to advance that or to modify it.
Let's say there's 7 Thieves Guilds set up throughout the world, right? And in order for you to get your epic, you've got to go visit all 7 of these ones and learn something and, you know, progress your quest along. That's gonna promote traveling. That's gonna promote adventuring. It's gonna promote, you know, grouping and running around. You know, I don't know.
What I would love to see, and I'll extend this past the rogue, even though this is the rogue show. Class-specific guilds that the contents pertain to that class. Now, just for the sake of argument, we're going to say that warriors only tank. Okay, just for sake of argument here. That means a warrior guild, he could walk in there and maybe duel someone his level, like an NPC his level, to find out if he's doing better as a tank. See how many hits he can take. It doesn't kill him, because it'll stop at like 10% or something, but it gives him an idea. Something that helps him do his job. With a rogue, you can buy what reagents you need, be it lock picks, alchemy or alchemical reagents, traps, whatever. Or he can fence items for a little more money, because we don't know how the whole theft thing like Elder Scrolls Online is going to work, if it's even going to be an option. So we'll just say he can sell stuff there for a little more. You know, just stuff that it's a home or a clubhouse for me. It should pertain to what I do. Yeah. Not just a general, get a couple quests. Should there be quests? Well, yeah, absolutely. There should be quests, class quests. There should be storyline quests for you. You know, just don't make the Warrior Guild and the Thieves Guild basically be the same thing, only look a little different.
Yeah. You know, spice it up. Go actually, you know, use the lore behind the classes and behind the world itself to, you know, make the individual guilds have a different feel to it.
Well, you also got to think. Okay, so let's take, you know, rogues for example. A halfling rogue is going to have a different lore or whatever than, let's say, a Scar rogue, because they're two different races. They have two different backgrounds. So maybe as part of your rogue mastery, you've got to go visit these other rogue guilds.
Good idea,
and learn how other races do it, learn their techniques, and learn their. It's like being a black belt, third degree, fourth
basically,
degree, fifth degree.
What about
right?
adding? What about adding every 10 levels? Basically, you have to go to the guild or whatever, and this takes you on your mastery rogue quest as an example. Okay, so for you to become the ultimate master of being a rogue, you have to basically go to the rogue guild, because they have the knowledge of the Scar rogue, they have the knowledge of the halfling rogue, they have the knowledge of the human rogue, etc., etc. Because every rogue from every race is going to be different.
Lore-wise, I mean, not ability-wise.
Yeah. Lore-wise, we're talking about the lore. Basically, this is just something to add to for you to do in the game before you get bored. More depth to it, etc. More depth for your class.
It adds flavor.
Yeah.
To your experience.
Yeah.
And we all want to live in flavor country.
So let's go and get Glenn into this, because we've been yapping off for the last 5 minutes or whatever. So, Glenn, what's your take on the Thieves Guild idea, or guild idea in general, for your class?
Well, I was thinking, I think everything that you guys are saying sounds good. I mean, a place for every class to have so that they can train, a place for them to go get their class quests and their master weapon quests and that type of thing. I was also thinking that it might be a good place for them to access the underground economy. Get things cheaper.
Black market.
Yeah, the black market, exactly. Get things cheaper. Sell fenced goods for a little bit. Get a little bit more for selling stuff.
That gives me an idea.
Yeah,
cool.
like you can only sell stolen items.
That gives me a good idea with the him mentioning to access the black market. Technically, a cleric is about all the healing and all the good in the world. The healers in general are all about spreading the love, etc. So technically, it wouldn't be very easy for me to get into the black market, because I am, by my law, a good person, a good class. So that's where the idea of the from Frogzor earlier on would kick in, the charming rogue.
Well,
to access the black market as a good class, a crusader. Let's technically say a crusader is a paladin, / crusader, whatever. He's aligned good. It's a good race who's out for justice.
Rogues had their own culture or whatever, right? They would have their own secret passageways and stuff like that only they would know about. You know.
But to finish off, the general idea is the black market, the way I see it, shouldn't be easy to access for every class. There should be a level of difficulty, because if I'm a good guy, I'm not going to just go and wander in there and go, hey, let me go and buy some illegal goods. It wouldn't happen. They wouldn't let me in there that easily, because I can't be trusted, because I might rat them out and say, ha, I found the black market, here it is, and boom.
I would love for rogues to have optional methods into any city.
Elaborate.
They have a tunnel that they can find, takes you right into the Rogues Guild inside town. So a good guy could go into a bad city that has a Rogues Guild.
Mm-hmm.
You can get in through a tunnel or a passageway or something. But right there, that's enough reason for me to want to be a rogue, because it's like, technically, my faction sucks with the ogres. Or actually, we'll say humans, because I don't think ogres will play that, but that'll probably be the next topic. That doesn't mean anything to me, because I'm a rogue. I can still sneak into the city.
Yeah, you can go anywhere. I mean, it's basically you're like an enchanter, being able to, illusion and go into any city.
Anyway, let's go and try and move on anyway, because there's still a few things on this list. Intimidation. Having the ability to intimidate. Could you see that working with the rogue?
The only way that I can think of making that work, and from a developer standpoint, this would be a freaking nightmare. It's a skill. Like, say someone sends you to go kill 10 rats. well, I killed 8. You can intimidate them to make them think that it's done. Like, you'll take 8 rats and you'll like it.
Because if you
Give me my money.
the way
I would fall into that whole charisma thing, like being able to lie and say
Right.
that you did it or you didn't do it. Or...
Nick brought up an idea earlier on, Nekaros, about having like kind of backstories that give you certain abilities depending on what you picked. Now with the intimidation, the way I could see that is if you've picked the assassin, or if you've gone down the assassin road, you can have the ability to intimidate where that could work, what Lexa suggested. But if you've picked the thief part, you're not going to intimidate anybody because you're a thief. That's how I could see where that's where I would see intimidation being able to work. It being an ability that you could choose to select by going down a certain, archetype path, picking the assassin. Because, hey, I'm going to intimidate, because if you don't, you better watch your back. You better have the eyes at the back of your head, or I might come up behind you and take you out. That's where the intimidation would come in for the rogue assassin, but not for the thief or for the duelist.
Yeah, but I mean, I agree with whoever, I don't know what you're saying, bought on here, but I wouldn't think an assassin's not going to intimidate anyway. They're just going to walk up behind you and slit your throat.
Well, there are more than one type of assassin. I mean, there are ones that you don't see them and they kill you. There are ones that actually walk up and like, you owe him money. Suck blade. But it makes sense from a term of he's an offensive style rogue, so he would do things that were an offensive manner. So intimidate makes sense in that respect. Honestly, I see an intimidation. If you were going to turn it into like a combat skill, maybe that would be something where you're intimidating the mob to not attack you.
Actually, the best intimidation would be directly at you, Lex, with just as a scar, a halfling coming up to you, going, "Move aside, or you're gonna get it."
I'd laugh. Yeah, right.
Bring it on.
My sword's bigger than
So let's
you.
go and get Glenn in. Glenn, the intimidation idea, from what you've heard from Kodiak, myself, what you might have read in chat, if anybody's brought anything up, what's your take on intimidation? Should that be something that an assassin could acquire? Would it make sense to have that kind of ability?
Well, I think, as you said, I think it would be dependent on their skill tree, their AA or whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
But I was thinking that this would be another area that would tie into the demeanor or personality of the mobs.
Mm-hmm.
If you can sense that this mob over here is the cowardly one that's probably going to run, then maybe you just flex a little bit, and it runs away. It's not exactly like a fear spell, but it could work. You could work to your advantage. So I think if they play up that demeanor, that personality system a little bit, you could definitely intimidate some of the mobs into doing what you want them to do.
Okay, so let's go and talk about the last one on here, corpse dragging. I definitely see the rogue being someone that would be the guy who could recover my corpse, who should be able to recover my corpse if I fall in the battlefield and whatnot and get slain. But I personally don't think it should be just limited to the rogue itself to be able to go and get corpses. I mean, technically a ranger could as well.
Well, technically anybody could. If
Anybody could. Yeah, exactly.
They can go get their corpse,
exactly. But just for the sake of argument in fantasy world, and we wanted to give everybody certain aspects of what they can do and what they can't.
Well, I think it would just be scenarios, like you said. If you're deep in a city and you need somebody, you would either get an enchanter or a rogue or somebody so they could cloak themselves to look like that race to go in there and get your corpse and bring it out, right? If you're out in the open, you may need a monk because you got tons of mobs chasing them. You may need to feign death to drop aggro 7 times in order to bring you back your corpse. Or if they do it like EQ2, where you can have a necro or a shadow knight summon your corpse to you. I think there's more than it doesn't really matter. There's going to be tons of different ways to get your corpse back.
Yeah.
If corpse recovery is a thing in Pantheon, it's going to be similar to EverQuest, where there are so many classes with skills to help you recover it that it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The only time that your corpse will actually sit there long enough to decay is when you say, you know what, I'm done with this game, I'm walking away. That's the only way. There was always someone.
Yeah, that happened at least once a week in EQ1.
And chances are, you give them a very small tip. Like in EverQuest, having 100 platinum was considered, fair pocket change. Giving someone 5 platinum was considered a very good tip.
Glenn, you got anything to add on the corpse dragging?
Yeah, I think it's like Kodak said. It depends. I think different classes will have different ways of getting the corpse. I don't think it needs to be a rogue, a special ability. I was thinking, this isn't about corpse dragging so much as avoiding the need to get your corpse. Would be to have the rogue have an evac, like a group evac, back to the beginning of the dungeon or whatever.
Yes, it's something that they've done in multiple games. In EverQuest 2, the Ranger, I think all Scout classes had evac, and the Druid got evac and everything. So they did put it out, and I do see where it would make sense for an assassin definitely to have the possibility to evac, or even the Ranger or something like that. So that's where I would limit the evac ability to maybe, if we look at the Scout classes, I would put it on. I would bet on the Ranger and the Rogue to have it. What's your take?
I always thought that they, like in EQ2, I didn't like how they gave it like as a group ability. I always thought that it should be a single ability, and that like Druids and Wizards, the people that can actually teleport are the ones that could do the group style.
I was
evacs.
just about to say that. It always bugged me because
it always bugged
I used to group
too.
with rogues a lot, even in EverQuest 2, and they would evac when we run into trouble. And I said,
was
"What
just
did
out
you
of
do? Put us all on your shoulders?"
Yeah.
It just, to me, it's again, it's one of these little things that it didn't make sense to me. So to me, it wrecked my immersion.
Or even like monks being able to group feign death, that didn't make any sense.
No, it's like, I'm going to teach you this mastered skill that took me years to figure out how to do.
Yeah,
and boom.
Yeah.
Well, technically, if you look at the monks, the disciples in real life, they can actually influence more than just one person. So
that's a good idea right there. Smoke bombs. So with their acclamy, let's say they have an oh crap thing, they throw out a smoke bomb in the middle of the fight. Now that gives them, it stuns all the encounter for 3 seconds to give you guys a chance to either heal or run away.
Yeah, that's a cool idea.
Now here's the thing. I don't want. I'm fine if they do that with rogues evac. I'm fine with that. That's cool, especially if they justify it with smoke bombs. Just don't make the evac such a large distance like a wizard or druid.
Yeah, a short evac. A
short run. Let's go.
It brings you just outside of the aggro. It brings you just away from the aggro. It puts you back a few hundred meters or whatever, instead of putting you back to this.
Have them set where their safe location is.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be a cool.
So they have.
That would be a cool thing as well to add. Give the rogue the ability to set a safe zone in the zone for his little evac button. He has to set it first. If he doesn't, hey, guess what? You're screwed.
Yeah, and it's still going to have maybe a distance on it, because otherwise you're going to see people who go, drop it here at this zone line, run across the instance, get my stuff, then boop, come right back.
Right, so I want to go and bring up 2 other things. This is also from Fogzo. I wonder if it would be feasible to have a group or ST buff where a rogue could either hide and sneak their group or a single person. Maybe have it be random so not to be OP. That's the first one. And the second one is, I think rogues in general could use an aggro transfer deal, where every so often, in conjunction with a large damage spell skill, could send the aggro to the tank. Now, I'm going to go and touch on that last part real quick, because it was done in EverQuest 2. The assassins did have aggro transfer, and it was very much needed for them to push the aggro towards the tank, because they were one of the top DPS classes in the game. I could see that making sense somehow, that they could transfer a bit of their aggro over to the tank. As for the invis point, then maybe being able to single to a single person in the group, give them invis. Maybe
But
for a very
they're
short.
not magical people. That's what I don't understand. Like, if it's an ability that they trained and learned, then it should be a self ability, not anything that they can give to anybody or cast on any person. They're not magic.
Right. If they do a group thing, I understand. Like, your foot's out in the light. Pull it in. Okay, that I can understand, because that's almost like the lending of your experience and skills to someone else. So, can they justify group invis? Absolutely. But here's the thing: my group members still will not hide as well as I do. So that's got to be taken. If they take that into consideration, boom, I will have a rogue alt. No way around it. If it's I can invis my group members, but there's a chance that it will drop. Like when you cast invis on someone else in the EverQuest 1, there was a chance that it would drop. If you run away and I can't refresh it, good luck.
Because basically that's what had to happen in EverQuest 2 as well. You had to stay behind the rogue or the ranger or whatnot who could cast invisibility on the group. I think it was actually the swashbuckler that did it. You had to stay within range. If you were too far behind, boom, it got broken. Basically, how I see it is like the way I see it is like Nick said. The rogue is simulating, showing a group how to hide. So picture you're putting a blanket over your head. Okay, if you're in range with this rogue, you're set. You're in the safe zone. You're in this blanket. But if you get out of that range, boom, you're seen automatically. That's why I could see it could work technically for a group.
I know we talked about that with wizards too. So like if a wizard had an invisible bubble, as long as you were inside that bubble, then you would be invisible to everything outside that bubble. But if a mob or somebody wandered into that bubble, they'd be able to see everybody.
Yes, that's where I was taking my example from, Morton, from Harry Potter and his blanket. Exactly.
Yes.
That's the best way to.
Everyone knows that reference.
Exactly. That's how I the
but
best way to explain it.
An item, not an ability.
It's still going to be technically an ability that you would use. It's something that you would cast still.
Right. I like the almost invis field around the rogue, but I still would like to see them incorporate stuff like if it's darker on this side of the room, the chances of being discovered are lower versus on this lighter side, because then you're like the rogue to me screams a skillful person.
Yeah.
You have so much raw talent and skill, it's insane. So the
now
gameplay needs to reflect that.
Thinking about acclamy though, or like being able them to make stuff on the fly using materials, I could actually see them whipping up an invis potion and throwing it on or sprinkling it on you real quick.
Well, it's like the smoke bomb idea. It's like the smoke bomb idea. Yeah. Boom! They throw that smoke bomb. You get covered in this smoke, and it's like a fog of war for you.
Oh God! I have partial coverage. Where are my legs?
It's like a fog of war, so you can't rush through it because you will be heard and everything, because you'll be snapping twigs and this, that, and the other, and wind whistling. You'd have to go really slow with this alchemy bomb that you're gonna the rogue puts down. Flash bombs, flash grenades, exactly, something like that, exactly. Let's go and get Glenn into it. Glenn, invisibility for the rogue. Should he be able to go in single cast or group cast? And what do you think of the ideas that Kodiak, Lex, and I have been discussing so far?
I think that I like the idea of using his improvised alchemy to come up with some sort of potion, that, whether it's a straight up invis potion or mimics a chameleon where you can blend into the background. Also, in going with the smoke bombs, when we were talking earlier about the rogue being able to sneak into the shadows and then use them to access the shadow plane and pop up somewhere else, I don't see any reason why they couldn't use the smoke bomb as a shadow and do that, and also bring a guide, the rest of the group with them. So that's just some outside of the box thinking, but I think that it would work.
That's why I like that smoke bomb idea. That was actually
it's
good.
pretty cool, yeah. Let's go move on to the aggro transfer, because we know it's been done. The assassin in EverQuest 2 had it. He could transfer aggro. So what's your take on the rogue class being able to push some of his aggro that he's going to gain over the duration of the fight? Should he be able to do something like that?
Oh, of course. I mean, any high DPS class should. You know, whether it's a monk that's feigned death to drop aggro, or a wizard that teleports short, out of the way. I think that they would just go invis for a few seconds till they drop their aggro, and then come back to life, and then go back at it.
I mean, it takes it comes down to skill in the end, and you as your class, knowing what you're capable of DPS wise, and being able to adapt to the tank's abilities, to the group's abilities in general. So it should be something that you should be able to do as a rogue to also to help your group out, because you don't want to be a disadvantage to the group, because you're pulling aggro all the time. Yeah, so that's why I see, it shouldn't be a de facto. That's a silly idea. It should be a natural coming, because we all know that the assassin is going to be a very high melee DPS class. Lex, you're nodding. Your take?
Well, get ready to the boos and hisses. I hate aggro transfers as a tank, but here's why. Aggro transfers, to me, scream, we didn't bother to balance this right. I value my DPSers that know what they're doing. That know when, hey, I'm probably climbing up on the theoretical threat meter. I'm going to back off a little bit, and then I'm going to go hard again, But with threat transfers, there's almost no reason to even worry about what you're doing.
Yeah.
I pulled
I
aggro.
agree.
Yep.
I'm good again for another 30 seconds.
The way
if a wizard drops
the way I see
the mana bar on a mob, he literally should die.
Right,
There's no way to get away with it.
I should elaborate a bit though. The way I see the aggro transfer deal working, connecting onto what Lex just said, is it shouldn't be something that I cast before I get grouped, and I go to the tank, I cast a spell on him. It should be similar to how it was done in EverQuest 2 with all the class with the de-aggro function. It was a short period, it was in an emergency, you've got the aggro, the tank's got no mana left to, pull the aggro off me, I use my de-aggro spell, it has 5 minutes to recast, hopefully it's enough and we get the job done. That's how I see this de-aggro functioning. If it's getting out of hand, it should be a short-term buff.
If, let's say you casted that to drop aggro, but then it made you couldn't do anything for 5 seconds.
Yeah.
It like stunned you or something.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that would be the only way to make that fair.
If aggro transfers are definitely going to be a thing in Pantheon, I'm not going to say that's it, I'm done. But what I'm saying is, if it's there, the way I would like to see it work is this is something to help my rogues increase their average DPS sooner in the battle, and it'll only last a couple seconds, and you can only it's something where you trigger it out of combat only, and it will last for a couple hits.
And I agree with you.
When
I would
the
rather
pull comes
have
to
people learn their class.
Exactly. Because you
rather
don't.
than give them this ability where they can just, I screwed up. Let me just give my aggro.
Yeah.
You get.
Think of it like this, okay? I'm a rogue. I'm out of combat. I trigger this ability. There's no There's no cooldown or not cooldown, but there's no duration. It's just done. And it's there until you use it, and it could be 1 to 3 hits. We'll say. So, we'll say a ranger comes, pulls a mob to me, the tank, or we'll say Cody had the tank because I'm the rogue. He taunts it. It's on him. Okay. Now, if I were to go with a huge backstab, bam, it crits, oh god, I'm going to be in trouble. But because of this buff, my threat is either ignored outright for the first 1 to 3 hits, however they want to do it, or that threat is given to my tank. That way, right from the get-go, my tank has a nice, solid lead on threat. He still has to maintain it. Has to maintain it well. Me, as a DPSer, I can, for the first couple of seconds, I can go just all out. I can go crazy. I can turn his back into Swiss cheese.
It should be a a limited ability.
Yes,
That's the way.
That is the only way that I would I would ever accept.
Exactly.
Because you have to prepare for it. It has to be used out of combat. So you've got to be smart.
Because it's the same with from a tank perspective, I can also connect to it because it is annoying if because you might not realize that he's put that spell on you and you're going, you're bashing, you're pulling, you're smashing everything. You're not going to know exactly where your potential is because you've got this stupid aggro spell transfer put on you, and you're thinking you're awesome. It's the same with me as a healer. I hated it when my paladin would self-heal without letting me know that he's going to put a self-heal on or use his heal spell. I hated it because I did not know if my abilities are efficient enough, if my healing capabilities are high enough, if I'm doing a good job. I would think, hey, I'm doing a fantastic job because everybody's always in the green, and it turns out it's not entirely true. It wasn't me, because the tank or the assassin pushed aggro over to him, or the tank healed himself. It should be short.
After the more and more we talk about this, I actually completely disagree with aggro transfer. Like, I literally think the tank should know how to hold aggro. A DPSer should know when to let up and let down. A healer should know to not over heal to draw aggro. That's all part of the game. That's all knowing your class. Like that's what I think is way more important than transferring aggro. Bottom line.
Because the problem is with most, from what my experiences in with assassins and DPS classes in general was, they tended to favor certain spells that did high damage, but they could achieve actually more damage over a longer period of time if they used, for instance, their dots that they had available to themselves that they could cast on the monster first and then fire off Ice Comet or Backstab, etc. But they all tended to just use the high damage spells and keep them constantly going in with that and wondering why they're getting aggro all the time. There's over a longer period of time, use your dots, your short-term buffs, your debuffing spells that you have available to you.
Slow.
Exactly. Start slow, build up.
Like I said, as a tank, if VR came to me and said, aggro transfers, yes, no, I'd say, hell no. Don't do it. I'm not a part of VR. I don't have a say in the matter. All I can do is say, if they're not there, woo! If they are there, I hope they're like this.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, I'm going to absolutely hate it.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people are going, Leg, you're a tank. You should love this stuff.
Nope.
It's a crutch. It's a crutch for bad tanks, bad DPS.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah. I agree.
I mean, they put these debuffs and dots in all these classes for a reason. Use them, because just because your Ice Comet is going to do 10,000k damage from the get-go, if you would have used your dot and your debuff beforehand, you might get 12 to 15k out of it.
Well, somebody said that big damage is usually or should be used for
as a finisher. The final part.
We were talking about that when we were talking about wizards being able to progressively, the more casting it over and over, it gets a little bit stronger, a little bit stronger, a little bit stronger, and then bam,
Well, with their Morton is saying remove aggro from them. That's your de-aggro that you should be able to cast as a last resort spell, has a short lasting period, like Kodak already said. Maybe you're stunned for 5 seconds, this, that, and the other. Each class should have their own kind of de-aggro ability but it should have a very long recast time and should be something that you seek out when you screwed up.
See, and I don't think so, because like I said, monks are always going to have a de-aggro, being that they can feign death, right? Rogues are going to have a de-aggro. It's not going to be an ability, it's just that they can go into hiding and drop aggro from there, So, I mean, certain classes are going to have it naturally with their abilities. Now, making it a special ability, I think is stupid.
Well, it makes
If you want to say something, you can just say, shut up.
Yeah, exactly, Glenn.
Sorry. Anything, Glenn? Sorry.
Well, no, I agree with pretty much everything that you guys are saying. I think that people should be responsible for their classes. They should be able to play their classes well. And I think instead of a aggro transfer, I think what the rogue should have is an evasive ability, like a defensive roll, where you could just roll backwards out of combat, and then that gives the tank a chance to just re-taunt the mob.
That's actually
instead of having to like transfer it.
That's actually a fantastic idea, to look at the de-aggro and aggro thing from a different perspective.
Yeah.
Look at it from, for instance, action combat. Give you the opportunity to leap back. You know, you're a rogue. You're in the battle. You're stabbing. You're doing this, that, and the other. You've grabbed aggro. Boom. You use your leap back spell and jump back 5 meters. Boom. You've lost the aggro.
I mean, it's the same, like I said, with the wizard when they do a little short teleport away from the mob. It would be the same thing, but with different animations, basically.
Yeah. That's all we have out of Discord on ideas for the rogue. Let me bring up the disclaimer real quick. We do not work for VR. We're not paid by VR to hype and talk about this game and everything. We're fans just like everybody else in the community, bringing ideas and discussions for you to help pass the time and help VR maybe think of things that we as a community come up with that might be really cool to have in the game. That's basically our disclaimer. We're here for the community, for you guys. Yep, we're the forums where we yap on, and you know, we're not part of VR or anything like that. So that's our thing. You know, we're doing the show to help you guys.
Daydreamers.
We're daydreamers. We like to speculate, brainstormers, brainstorm ideas. Yep, exactly. Pariah Play says it right. VR doesn't pay us, we pay VR. Exactly. We pay to do the show. Before right, what we'll do is now is, as you guys know, we had a contest going from the 1st till the 9th until officially yesterday to send us your jokes. So I'm going to give Kodiak, Lexa, you guys in chat the time to think of something to bring up for us to talk about while we talk about the competition.
Already got something.
Yeah, well, let's go wrap off the contest first. People sent us our jokes, and we have a winner. I'm going to bring it up right now. Drum roll, please, Kodiak. Bang on your... There we have it. Winner is Sintro. This joke just fits 100%. It was spot on. A suicidal Darkmere walks into a bar. The bartender asks, "What will it be?" The Darkmere responds, "I'll just have a glass of water. Thanks." And for all of you guys that miss or don't quite get the joke, when we talked about the Darkmere, the race, the Darkmere, we found out that they're basically allergic to water. It kills them. So, Sintro...
That's why they moved to the land, because they couldn't live in their water.
Thank you for that joke, and we'll get in touch with you, how you can obtain your prize, the Watcher's Pledge, and congratulations, man. We had a lot of good jokes, but this one did stand out. And Lex, you said that you had something for the rogue.
Yeah, it was already in chat, so I'm stealing it from whoever said it. Basically, race combinations.
Pardon? Race combinations?
Race combinations for the rogue, or acceptable races.
Oh, okay.
Well, I said rather than saying which ones they should be, it should be which ones shouldn't be, because there's less that shouldn't be.
Ogre shouldn't be. He's too big. He's too big. Boom, boom.
I mean, I think like rogues are more of like a wizard or like a warrior. Like, I think that there should be a lot of races that are going to have a rogue class.
Yeah,
I think there will be, but some races just don't make sense. Like, a lot of people will go, ogres are too big. Well, I don't even see it as a size issue. Ogres are warriors.
Yeah.
At heart. They want to meet toe to toe. They won't want to be sneaky. Same with the Scar. They're all about just head on.
Well, actually, ogres are tacticians. Why wouldn't they use rogues?
well, they might use them, but I don't think they would probably figure that to be a dishonorable way to fight.
Yeah, exactly. Sneaking, tricking, and same with like Arkai. They seem to be more of a magical, you know, rather than sneaky,
Right.
Right, so
But, I
from
mean,
the 9
obviously-
bases, Lex, since you brought it up,
Mhm.
which classes or which races do you see or don't see being a rogue?
Arkai, I don't see it, even though they're like the whole joyous kind of thing. I just don't see it, and I can't put my finger on why I don't.
Mm.
The wars, I can see that absolutely. Darkmere, yeah, because they kind of seem graceful, which to me means finesse. So that screams rogue to me. Ogre, we've already discussed that. Humans, jack of all trades.
Yeah.
It'd be silly for them not to be one.
Mm-hmm.
Halflings to me scream, I am a rogue.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're mischievous, they're reckless. You know, that screams rogue to me. For whatever reason. Elves, absolutely, because again, it's just like the Darkmere. They're very dexterous, very agile, which to me screams finesse and skill. So, yeah, I could definitely see them. Gnomes, I could, although I would understand if they said no.
I'd say that's below them. They don't. I would think
Right.
that they're like, Shh, no.
They almost come off as we're more evolved than this.
Mhm.
So I could definitely understand it if they said no. But when I think gnome, I'm still going to think back to EverQuest. You know, your cute little bald gnome with a big pimp stash. You know, he was a rogue. So while I do in a way want to see gnome rogues, I absolutely understand if they said no.
Well,
doesn't make
that's
sense.
yeah. Most MMOs, WoW and EverQuest or whatever. Yes, gnomes would typically be a rogue, but I think that the lore would dictate that in this game that they wouldn't be.
What about the Scar, Lex?
Absolutely not.
Um,
Absolutely not. They're about brute force. Brute force, head on, rip my enemy to shreds with my bare hands if I have to.
so I think we covered all. Is that all 9?
That is all 9.
Right. So because we've got some of the things to talk about. Kodiak, do you agree with Lex? Yes, no.
Yeah.
Yep. Glenn, what about you?
Yeah, I agree with him. I'd say Scars, Ogres, Arkai, not. You forgot the Dwarves, but I think that they would be, and I'm hoping that they will be because that's what I'm planning on making.
Fine. Because there's 2 things that we still want to talk about. Coach asked, and this brings up that what we were talking about earlier on. Will rogues have an increased perception ability, since they are already on the lookout for traps, etc.? And the other thing that I wanted to bring up as well, what about an increased visibility during the night for rogues?
That to me screams more of a racial thing.
Okay.
To be honest.
So let's go and talk about the perception system, because somebody asked in chat earlier on before we started the show if we could elaborate a bit more on the perception system.
I think that it would be. I think it would be a special skill. Like I said, like tracking. Like they would have to get their skill so defined where they could sense traps and sense perception and sense this and sense that. Rather than there's things just going off like crazy.
Because I mean, technically, an increased perception ability makes sense to the rogue if he can pick locks, unlock gates, etc. He has a better ability to access stuff that can't normally be accessed. So he should have a perception increase for sure. Is the way I see it for the rogue class. Can we go and elaborate a bit on what VR have released or have told us about the perception system? Anybody want to kick it off? Start and try and explain. Lex, you're it. There. Nobody's talking.
Well, I was reading chat.
Explain.
Yeah, it's because we're doing it on Beam and Twitch. So if anybody talks in Beam, that's what the bot is showing up.
Right.
In Twitch.
It's relaying chat between the two.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that just real briefly?
Can you try and give an in-depth insight into the perception system and what is known about it so far from VR?
Basically, it's how you would interact with the world. in very short description details, like you notice there's a crack in the wall, or a stone is loose, or there's a ring on the ground. And it's just things that will give you a little hint, things that you might walk through an area and notice.
But like we talked about halfling, just because they're smaller to the ground, they're going to notice things.
Well, yeah.
That the taller races are not going to notice.
Right, and with a rogue, to me, it makes more sense to give them increased perception, because a rogue has to be careful. He has to kind of know his surroundings. He's got to be very picky about where he sets his ambush. He's got to pay attention to what's going on, because if something doesn't go right, it could be his eye. So it makes sense to me.
Right, to answer Warbin's question again on the perception, basically the perception system is going to be part of the quest system as well. It's a way of achieving, gaining a quest. There's going to be all kinds of different ways to get the perception going. It's going to be class related, it's going to be race related, it's going to be maybe group related, etc. There's going to be different ways to access the perception system. They also mentioned that it will be dynamic as well. There will be dynamic perception. So that's the info that we have now as a community on as far as the perception goes, to answer your question from earlier on.
Right. What Yarnella can perceive in the game as a cleric may not be the same as what I perceive as a Dire Lord, because it's a holy relic or something to that effect. It's almost like tiny little hints and tips of, hey, there's something over there you should check out. And from what we know UI-wise, there's going to be a small pop-up. From what we know so far, that can change, but we got to go with what we know with a grain of salt, because everything is subject to change.
And the perception system is a great way to socialize, and all the angst that everybody's having on long travel times, this, that, and the other, the game being really hard, and why would I go in group with somebody, and this, that, and the other. The perception system is the best way to explain this, because it could kick off any time. You could travel through Avendir's Pass from level 1 to 30, and nothing ever happened. You hit 31, and all of a sudden, because you gained that level for whatever reason, or you've achieved a certain quest as advanced in your quest log or whatever, perception system kicks in. So you're always going to go and want to adventure back and forth and see what's going on. So perception's a great thing.
It's going to basically make you want to pay attention to the story that's going on around you too, rather than having a quest book and all you do is click next, accept, next, accept.
Right.
Anything else, guys? Glenn, do you have anything that we might not have touched on that you might have noted down or something that you want to talk about on the Rogue?
No, I was just gonna put in my 2 cents worth on the perception thing. I think that rogues would have an increase in perception, simply because that's what they've trained to do. They're trained to be aware, to search, to spot, to scout about, to see the world in a way that other people don't. So regardless of what race they are, I think they're gonna definitely see those things more often.
More honest, perception is for all characters. All we're saying is basically that the perception ability is going to be way higher for a rogue, because he has access to things that the other classes don't have access to. Because he is a rogue class, he can pick locks, he can sneak around, etc. So he would have the higher ability to receive perception quicker than somebody else would. Every class, every race is going to have its own perception. There's going to be group perception, there's going to be class-specific perceptions, and races.
Wizards and enchanters, their perception is going to be able to see magic.
Exactly.
In the world,
yeah.
That's something that a rogue isn't going to be able to see, but a caster class would see.
Yeah.
Right. And that, what Mort's talking about here, that comes down to what VR does.
Yeah.
Because you could, as a warrior, be turning your head and notice how they corner your eye, that wall just shimmered. Well, that's magic, because it's an illusion. But you just noticed that it shimmered, so you go over, oh my god, look, it's a false wall. That's not. Whereas, maybe a wizard can feel the wall. It's all on how they implement it for each class, how the perception interacts with me. That VR has to have it make sense. You can't just be, I'm a rogue, so I'm going to walk by here and go, hey, that's magic.
Yeah.
It's like, well, how the heck do you know?
Well, maybe because he's got a bard in the group and the bard's playing his guitar the whole time and it's vibrating.
And it changed the spectrum of reality.
Or the dwarf just happened to fart or something. I don't know.
But something like that, it doesn't really make sense to even speculate on.
Yeah.
Only because that is 100% in VR's hands and how they hand a perception trigger to us. If it doesn't make sense, there's nothing that we can really do about that, And it's very easy for us as players to say, well, that doesn't make sense. That was stupid. But there's a lot of things from behind the scenes as a developer that you got to consider. When they're making that perception event, does that mean they have to add 50 different tags for what kind of things it pertains to with 50 different messages to point them to it? That's a lot of work when you consider there could be hundreds of thousands of perception events.
Yeah.
That's like 10,000 hours of manpower in just data entry. That's nuts. So we're going to have to give them a little bit here and there to say, well, that may not be 100% right, but I understand that we got to let you do a little bit, cut a little bit of corners here and there. Otherwise, this game will never come out. They'll be too busy writing perception notes.
I mean, and it's things that they can, they can get the basics done now, and then over time, advance it. Because that's the best. That's the great thing about this game. They have plenty of time. They can get the game done as they need it to be for us to go and get in there to do testing when it comes to release, and they can still advance the stuff further along. I mean, we have dynamic questing, we have the perception system kicking in, offers you quests. There's so many possibilities and things that VR are doing that's going to make this so immersive and feel right and great and fantastic. And they can work on all these individual pieces at their own pace, at their own time, and advance them with our great ideas that the community brings forward and stuff like that. So, there you go. There's my hype for today. What do you guys think? Have you got anything else to add or chat? If you've got another thing that you want us to maybe speculate on for the Rogue, you can write it now down in the chat. And I'm going to bring up next week's show. Next week's show is General Tank Discussion. What we're going to do is basically talk about these three classes from a general viewpoint. Not from the individual one, we've done that already. But there's things like, should all tanks be able to tank? Stuff like that, the general discussion. How threat should work? Should they have different stances? This, that, and the other. So it's going to be a general discussion on the tanks. I'm really looking forward to finally getting into the general discussions for these individual classes. And one more thing I want to bring up for speculation, unrelated to the Rogue. Now, you guys have realised there's 12 classes. We've now covered the 12th class that's going to be there by launch. And we know that the Necromancer and the Bard are coming. Now, if we add the Necromancer to the Mage classes, that puts them at 4. If we add the Bard into the mix, that puts the Melee classes at 4. So technically, we should see, at some point in time, a 4th Healer class and a 4th Tank class.
Blood Mage.
What did you say?
I said Blood Mage.
Yep, so that might give you guys some ideas, something to talk about here. There's definitely, because there's going to be 14 classes altogether post-launch with the Necromancer and Bard added to it. And I can't see them not adding a 4th Healer and 4th Tank in the mix. So I'm definitely going to say, right now to VR, there's going to be 16 classes at some point. Speculate on what the other Healer and the other Tank could be.
Probably an Inquisitor and a Blood Mage. That's what I speculate.
Expansions make the world go round. They can do anything to the world, anything to your game.
So
Or a
let's
berserker.
so I'm gonna look at. I'm having a look at chat. Is there anything in chat? Anything you guys got for the rogue?
What kind of debuffs would you expect? Because the rogues have been stated as a DPS and a support class.
Yeah, that's
What
I
kind of
actually was
debuffs
thinking about
or
that
what kind
earlier,
of buffs
but
would they give?
we were on a tangent about cutting people up and
Taking a
making
face off.
masks out of them and stuff like that. But I was thinking about like an ability like puncture, right? And we were because it makes me think of we were talking about how bandaging and stuff like that instead of it making a useful thing, right? So if you get punctured, you would need to use a band-aid, not just a healing ability. Yes, you'd be able to heal, but the bleed from the puncture would eventually kill you. You know, stuff like that. I think that those should be, rogue abilities.
Okay. Well, roll with it. What would you see?
Go for it, Glenn.
Go for it, Glenn. Go on.
I would say, as far as debuffs go, the more traditional ones like sap for stun, also maybe throwing out the caltrops to slow them down and also injure them a little bit. And I was thinking something as far as buffs go, something along the lines of maybe they've trained themselves so well that they can kind of see in the dark, not as a magical thing, but just they have dark sight, you know.
What about confusion as a debuff? Irritation. That they
somebody put putting dummies or distraction or or whatever.
Something like that. I could see I could see a rogue.
I see that being far too cheesy, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I think that more of enchanter, like the illusion, like but.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
when I think of a rogue, if I'm going to add support, debuffs and buffs. For debuffs, I can see stuff like reducing armor, a very minor slow. Because you might be able to strike it like a monk could strike pressure points. You could do the same thing, but with a dagger.
The problem is that you guys are missing the whole acclimate aspect that they're trying to put on these rogues. So I think that's going to be a huge part of their support aspect is, like we were talking about the smoke bombs or the invisibility, potion that they can apply to a person or,
I mean, they could add
putting poison on your weapon.
Exactly.
Yeah. In terms of buffs, I was about to say I could definitely see giving people clickables to modify weapons, like adding a poison to it.
No, but
with
I don't
poisons,
think it would
there's
be
still
like
a whole broad
somebody
spectrum
a
you can do.
potion. Because I think that would be more like, a trade skill. I'm talking about like being able to click on that person, kind of like you would click on a person to give them a hit point buff, but you would click on that person and apply your poisons to their weapon.
So you throw the poison on them, like the smoke bomb.
Well, yeah. I mean, you could. I wasn't actually saying how it was going to be done, but like reducing armor could be an acid poison or something like that. You could do something that increases your target's miss or his hit chance by putting some kind of powder in his eyes. So now he's just like, you could obviously have physical style debuffs where I stab him in the hamstring. Well, now he's snared. You could do buffs where, like theoretically, a buff that would increase your group's crit chance because you're kind of pointing out areas to hit.
Right.
You're kind of saying that's a soft spot.
I got a really crazy idea. People are going to hate me for it. Maybe they might like it. They might not. With the poisons, what about basically a general poison that he can give anybody in the group for a short duration of time? It adds a poison effect to your spells. You dot the monster normally with your ice and frost. Now, because you've got a rogue in your group and he's put that poison spell on you, you're going to add a poison dot to it as well. That would last maybe.
Poison is a tangible item, right? And magic is conjured.
Yeah.
So I don't think
it's like trying to combine a liquid and a gas.
Yeah.
Almost.
That's the only reason why I don't think that would. I mean, I could see like maybe a wizard fortifying a mage's spells with a secondary, tip.
Well, let's go and say,
something.
okay, bad example with the wizard, but let's say the ranger. Yeah, the melee classes, the normal classes, the monk, the ranger, etc. Being able to, through their spells. So now I've got my arrow, my 3 arrow shot that has a dot on it as a ranger.
Mm-hmm.
Now I've got this poison spell on it. My arrows are now tinted with poison.
That's what I'm saying.
It's a pitch. Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Whatever effect you had, plus a poison.
But just picture it. Just bear with me, Kodiak. Just picture it, just to make it simple. Having that option, be it a item that you have to click on, but it's only for a short period of time, it would add that effect to your abilities.
Mm-hmm. I think rogues should have an awful lot of shorter duration buffs and debuffs. You could use your alchemical concoctions to do stuff like, here's a short duration haste potion.
Mm-hmm.
Or here's a poison. Here's a bottle of poison. Put it on your weapons. But it only has to pertain to, like Kodiak said, physical weapons, not whatever you want to call it, magical, energy, whatever. That doesn't make sense. And kind of the same thing really goes with debuffs, because you wouldn't think that a rogue who is a physical character, just generalizing it here, not putting their alchemical stuff in the view here, you wouldn't think that they would be able to affect magical creatures so much in terms of debuffing. Well, that's where your alchemical and your poisons come in. You could get a poison that clouds the mind, it really muddles with their heads so that their casting speed slows down, or they have a misfire chance. I mean, when you're dealing with something that has a broad spectrum and a lot of stuff with Pantheon right now, there's so many different ways that you can go.
I can say it, my brain just goes, I get so excited that I just, everything gets muddled up there. I guess somebody shot me with one of those.
You got poison,
poison muddle things, but my brain goes faster than my mouth sometimes, sorry.
I'm with you. I'm right there with you. I mean,
I'm even worse.
But
progeny.
Yeah.
Now here's the thing. When we first started the show, I was sitting here going, a support rogue? God no. I hated brigands in EverQuest 2. I just hated them.
Boo.
I liked my assassin rogues, my damage dealers, my good old faithful damage dealers. But sitting here and talking about it, I'm very much warming up to the idea of a support rogue done correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Make them very dependent on.
It doesn't.
I think that you're going to see the traditional rogue as far as combat is concerned, but they're throwing in that whole acclamy thing as that's the twist. Is that they can take that acclamy thing and go any direction they want. I think somebody's, they can have poisons, they can have the smoke bombs, they can have traps, they can have all these different things that are done through the acclamy thing to give them the support aspect that is going to be the twist for this game.
Right. What I really want to see for rogues is I want to see gameplay that supports skillful players. I mean, be it like you see how you have the graphical interactive lockpicking from Elder Scrolls Online. That to me means that when it gets harder, you have to raise your personal skill, not a skill in the game, because that makes you feel more like a rogue because I'm picking the lock. It's not just I pick locks until my character can finally do it. And I know it's a lot to ask, so VR, I am sorry. It's a lot to ask. To make combat a little more interactive for rogues. To make it a little more skill-based. Give it a gentle curve.
That's what I said. I just don't think the support from a rogue is going to be anything magical. They're not going to be able to invis somebody through magic or evac or any of that stuff. I think that what they are going to be able to do is collect little trinkets here and there, combine them together to apply it onto somebody. They have to physically touch them in order to give you that thing. They can't just cast it.
Right. Now, when you think alchemy, from like a shaman's point of view, invis potions and stuff like that makes sense. It does, because they can do it, and they're all about the herbs. Special herbs, man. I can see something similar in terms of invis potions, but that's only because it's very hard to facilitate hiding versus being invisible in a game. It's just the mobs see you, the mobs don't see you.
Well, that's actually a pretty cool idea from Dark Soul, real quick, sorry. How about, as a support for the rogue, a battle bandage to lessen a bleed in combat?
Yeah, see, something like that. That's something physical that they can
Exactly.
do.
Right.
And
in game.
It does. For a rogue,
an assassin would know, or a rogue would know how to bandage
rogues
somebody.
And warriors are non-magical. They're not hybrids at all. So you can't, giving them the ability to evac an entire group makes no sense.
Right. Yeah, because they don't pick everybody up and run away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But a smoke bomb, and then everyone goes a little bit away.
With a 2-second
that makes sense
stun.
to me, because I can justify a poof, we all running, even though it's just boom, they teleport us in game. I'll justify it in my own way, but I can't justify evac, and all of a sudden I'm on the other side of the zone, and I'm sitting there going, "Did you carry me? Because you're an itty bitty little thing, and I'm a giant character. Because this ain't working." But
imagine. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you
go, Glenn. Please, Glenn, speak. Speak.
Inject yourself right in. Come on.
But imagine if, they're not magical, but what if they can mimic magic, i.e., sleight of hand, distraction, that type of thing. So
that would make sense.
You can sneak your opponents out of there through that type of that type of distraction. Cause a distraction, sneak them through. I mean, it's like stage magicians in our world. It's not real magic, but it looks like it.
What do you mean it's not real?
Oh my god! You mean that corner didn't come out of my ear?
Wait. Siegfried and Roy are not real?
To me, it's going to be a matter of them giving an ability, and I know it's all superficial. Everything about this is superficial here, but it helps my immersion. Like saying, you use a sleight of hand trick to make your opponent drop their weapon. Or you do something where it's like, oh look, I tied their shoes together, and then making the ability reflect that. It's called tie shoes, right? But if the guy you're fighting doesn't have shoes, you're like, what am I doing? Tying his toes together? It's little things like that that really break my immersion personally. So when it comes down to rogues' abilities, I'm fine if they mimic magic in terms of like, oh, here's a potion that'll help you hide a little, that'll hide you for a while. Well, put a little bit of, don't just say, boom, it's invis, we just put a different name on the buff. Make it a little different. It's really good if you stand still, but because you're a warrior, you're not a rogue, with this buff, when you try to move, the more you move, the higher the chances are of being
movement speed, 75% or something.
Yeah,
right.
or
make it easy and just say you got to stay near him to do it.
Yep.
Okay, does that make sense? Because in my mind, I'm telling myself I have to stay close to him because he's going to be the one going, whoa, 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 stop. Let the guy walk by. Okay, now come on, let's go. He's being the rogue, he's being the leader for this, and he's helping everyone sneak past. And it's all those little things that really help my immersion to make me go, this game is freaking awesome, versus I'm just playing a game because it's something to do.
Cool. Nice. Anything else, guys? No?
I think we just want to make sure that they're not, that the rogue stays the rogue, that they're not another CC class, because that's taking away from the enchanter. Plus I'm hoping that the bard will be a CC class, and that they're not that they're not a hybrid class, that they really are focusing on rogue skills.
Well, that's what
the thing is
if I could ask you just a quick question on that specific topic, Glenn. How would you feel, because rogues have traps, that you did have like a short duration, we're talking like 20, 30 seconds, almost like a hunter from WoW, where you could pull them to the trap and not saying it's going to encase them in a block of ice. It just keeps them over there. They'll still attack people. It's almost like a route for 20 to 30 seconds, and that's how they can help in terms of CC. But there's no way in your right mind you could say, Rogue, he's a CC'er.
I think that works. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely different types of CC, and I think that there can be more than one CC class. You know, like I said, I'm hoping that the Bard will be one, and yeah, the Rogue can have that type of thing. Certainly roots, because it wouldn't be like the Enchanter where they're mezzing or whatever. But I just think, yeah, I mean something like that would be fine. I just would be careful to turn it into a CC class.
Yeah.
I mean, we're basically, because it says in the description of the class, it says melee DPS support. We shouldn't look at the word support in that sense that which we've been viewing it from. It's just a way to describe where he's going to be put in. He's going to be his main role is going to be melee DPS, and he's going to have a supportive role, and he might have a bit of CC in it.
See, that's what I think. I think he's going to be your traditional rogue that we know and love from all the other games.
Exactly.
But like I said, throwing in that whole acclamy thing is going to give them the support aspect.
Yep.
As well as the trap disabling and the lockpicking and that type of stuff. I think that's also the way that it can be supportive.
I mean, if he can pick a lock or disarm a trap, he should be able to use a trap.
You can pick a lock, you can pick your nose.
He should be able to use the trap to his advantage.
Mm-hmm.
So he's now disabled that trap. We walk into that room, and all of a sudden there's a bunch of monsters coming at us. He should be able to rearm that trap for our advantage.
Yep.
That's how I see it. Anyway, I think we've covered quite a lot today. Maybe not everything, but it seems like we're getting to that point.
We got a good little chunk of it done.
We've got a good chunk of it down.
We'll still probably go back and revisit a lot of these classes when we get more information.
Yep. And plus we have the general discussions as well, where we might revisit and think about ideas. So don't forget next Thursday.
That's what made me think of it.
Don't forget next Thursday is the tank discussion, everybody, where we talk about all the tanks and maybe speculate on what the fourth tank could be. So join us this Tuesday for our Tavern Talk show, where we cover all the latest news for VR, talk about some of the forum topics, actually maybe the newsletter that just came out in November. We'll touch on that real quick as well on Tuesday. And on Thursday, general discussion. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll see you on Tuesday, 4 p.m, this channel, same time. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
See ya.
Good night.